All right, welcome back. I want to get right to it. We have Ratner, the chief, the CEO of Talk Media News. So we always love it when she joins us live in the Auto Fair listener line. It's from the West Coast, up early. Thanks, Ellen. How are you?
Absolutely. Well, you know something. It's really interesting. I read, and I'm one of the few people that probably read and heard live the president's speech to the United Nations. And I heard it, and then I read it. And I have to tell you, I don't think it's as bad as the liberal media has made it out to be. And I'm a liberal. I'm not a Trumper. But I have to tell you, I thought it was a pretty darn good speech.
I think it was certainly a very stern speech, probably the best he's given. He stuck to the teleprompter, messages about socialism, the Iranian nuclear deal, North Korea, and America's role. All right, Ellen, of course, Mexico, bad earthquake, and Puerto Rico. Head on.
So Puerto Rico, 88% of the people in Puerto Rico do not have electricity. And as you know, they have American passports. They're Americans. They may be a territory, they may not be a state, but they carry American passports.
Right.
We also know that over 200 people have died. I think the last count was 217 in Mexico City. And in Mexico, the earthquake hit close to Mexico City, but then affected Mexico City.
Right.
Puerto Rico is in some really big trouble. Even though the storm started as a Category 5 and downgraded to a Category 4, it's still a huge storm, and it looks like Puerto Rico is going to probably be decimated.
Yes, really, and of course the population much greater in the U.S. territory. Thank you, Ellen Ratner. Enjoy your time on the West Coast. Talk Media News.
You got it.
All right, been talking a little bit, or actually somewhat, since it first was a possibility that the town council in Durham, of course, Durham, New Hampshire, home of the University of New Hampshire, would move to consider adding to the Columbus Day holiday in name or principle, the Indigenous Peoples Day. First, it was going to be the Age of Exploration and Indigenous Peoples Day. My understanding is this week the council made it official, Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day. Joining us with some perspective on this is Todd, and I believe it's Todd Selig, is the town manager, unless it's Selig, I'm not sure of the pronunciation. He's the town administrator, actually, for Durham. He joins us in the Auto Fair listener lines. Todd, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. It is Selig, as you said. Thank you.
And Todd, I must say, as a town manager or administrator, because I get your emails, you communicate a lot. You seem to really be fired up about what you're doing in Durham. Of course, it's a great community, and I've had some commentary on this story. But tell me, why'd you feel the need for the town council to really be the first in New Hampshire, I think, following some communities in Maine and Los Angeles, to add Indigenous Peoples Day to Columbus Day?
Well, the issue came forward earlier this year. A member of the Durham community, a retired minister, came before the Durham Town Council and requested that the council consider making the change. The council spoke about it briefly and referred the matter to our local Durham Human Rights Commission, on which I'm a member.
So Durham has a Human Rights Commission.
We do. We have a 3-member Human Rights Commission that was set up several years ago to deal with various issues surrounding human rights.
And real quick, before I want you to continue on the process, but was this Reverend Bricknerwood? Do you remember retired Reverend? I'm just curious because the University of New Hampshire has a Reverend who objected to the part of the hand-painted town mural in the post office. I was curious if it's the same.
Right. That's Larry Bricknerwood is a longtime resident of Durham and a pastor here as well.
Okay.
And it was not Larry Bricknerwood who brought the issue forward. It was another gentleman named Neil Ferris, who is a retired minister, a longtime resident of the community. And what he stated to the council was that in his research of Christopher Columbus, he had come to the conclusion that Columbus was not a particularly good person and had committed a lot of wrongs and was not deserving of a holiday recognizing him, but that the people who were the victims, essentially the indigenous peoples in the Americas, should instead have a holiday recognizing their many hardships and their accomplishments during their long history here on this continent.
Quick question, and this is one resident who brings this forward, and the town council felt so moved to pursue it. 2 observations, Todd. Todd Selig is the town administrator for Durham. It's interesting and interesting that this retired pastor, I would feel comfortable judging someone 500 years later by today's measurement. But that's, I guess, but where do you draw the line? What if another resident comes forward and says, we think that Thanksgiving, the holiday, is a little insulting to Native Americans because it celebrates something that wasn't such a celebration back then, and it's not really accurate. Do we change the name of You see where I'm going with this? Where do you draw the line?
Oh, it's a great question. And, we had a similar conversation at the Human Rights Commission about the topic. And I think the thinking on the Human Rights Commission and my own thinking evolved. I'm from Laconia, New Hampshire. I am a proud member of the Laconia High School class of 1987, a sachem. And, I am very positively disposed toward the many contributions Native Americans had for our state. Growing up on Lake Winnipesaukee, Lake Opeechee, Lake Winnisquam, etc.
Dartmouth College? I mean,
exactly.
I can keep going. Yeah.
Exactly. So many, many contributions. And, frankly, in school where I learned about Columbus, which I think many other people learned, was pretty simplified. That, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Columbus was a pretty great guy, discovered America, and everything we know flowed from there. And when we began to actually talk about it and learn more about Columbus, we learned that he wasn't all good, as none of us are. But in fact, a lot of hardships followed.
But see, this is where I applaud your openness on this and passion, I guess. But I kind of the sanitizing history thing is where I put it under Todd.
Right.
I look at where do we draw the line? Are we going to close Mount Vernon because our founding father had slaves, or Jefferson at Monticello? I mean, Charlottesville. Some students want to take Jefferson's name off the founder of University of Virginia. I think this is ludicrous. I think this goes too far. We want to be here as a country. I mean, General John Stark in New Hampshire. You look at some of our early history. He's a pretty tough guy when it came to fighting so-called Native Americans or British or anyone else. Do we scrub his name from history? See where I'm going? I just don't. Columbus, no one's perfect. Obviously, tough guy when they came to some indigenous peoples' islands or territories to settle or fight in the New World. But I didn't live back then. I don't want to judge him today. I just think it's a little bit. Is this political activism or is it town management?
Yeah, locally in a community, most of what we do has some political element to it. Do we pave Road A or Road B?
Right.
What do we name the new high school? Whose name are we going to recognize? And I think that history is a changing landscape, and over time we learn more. And I think it's okay to take a look at what we've done, what we've recognized, and think critically about whether that still makes sense or not.
Right.
In Durham, with our Human Rights Commission, initially our thinking was that, hey, indigenous people have suffered a lot of hardships, and they have made tremendous contributions to this country. When the early settlers arrived in what is actually America, on the Mayflower, it was Native Americans who met them, who taught them how to farm, who helped them survive, frankly.
Right.
And so we had originally suggested that we establish some other day as Indigenous Peoples'
Well, I was going to
Day.
say, why not get rid of Columbus Day completely? Are you guys going to be closed down on Columbus Day as a town?
Well, the fact that the Durham Town Council has voted to recognize Indigenous Peoples' Day on the second Monday in October does not change the fact that Columbus Day is still a federal holiday on that day. So locally, what we will do is speak of it as though it is Indigenous Peoples' Day rather than Columbus Day. But to the extent residents of Durham want to still consider it Columbus Day, they are perfectly free to do that because it is still a federal holiday on that day.
So you don't have to say, to be politically correct, I'm going to go to the dairy bar, it's Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples' Day. You can choose which one.
Yeah, people can choose whatever they want to call it.
And as far as now goes, Thanksgiving, we're still safe on that holiday?
We are still safe on Thanksgiving, I'm happy to say, yes.
Todd Selig, thanks for being a good sport. Seriously, I appreciate coming on the show. We'll get you back again soon. He's a town administrator in Durham. I must say, your communications and your emails, you keep a lot of people up to breast or informed of what's happening. Thank you for joining us on the show.
It's a pleasure. Durham is a very we are a big thinking community. We think about a lot of issues, and we work really hard to come to good solutions. And some people may agree with them, others may not, but we do so in a very public way. And ultimately, the town council follows a democratic process, and this Monday they voted 7-2 in favor of this resolution establishing Indigenous Peoples Day.
Well, thanks, Todd. And again, Thanksgiving is safe for now, but I appreciate it. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right. When we come back, we're going to get a lot. All right. Hey, want to just get to this one quick. We want to bring in for an update Dr. Bill Storo. He's a pediatrician at CHAD in Concord. He specializes in concussions, injuries, and prevention. And the last week at Southern New Hampshire University, when the folks at Dartmouth-Hitchcock, they put on this symposium on concussions. We wanted to get an update from Dr. Storo. He joins us in the Auto Fair listener lines. Doctor, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Well, we know that there's been a lot more awareness in the last several years. There's protocols with youth sports and things like high school sports. You'd hope they'd be adhered. But are we seeing, at least in New Hampshire, when a kid gets banged in the head and there's a possible concussion, are the kids coming out of the game, or are still cases where that's not detected?
Without a doubt, there are still cases where they're not coming out of the game, but far and wide, for the most part, kids are coming out. They're being evaluated, which is good for kids' safety.
Now, helmets have been adapted at all levels, and Matt Chatham, the former New England Patriot, three-time Super Bowl champ with the Patriots, was part of the symposium last week, and he said, it's part of the game, that we know it's a physical game, but there's this debate: should the kids start really hitting until they're a little bit older? What are your thoughts on that, Doc?
So I think the more we can protect the head, the better. And so there is a big movement to flag ball earlier on, or having a lot of no-hit practices. And I think anything we could do to decrease, especially early on, hits to the head is a good thing.
Well, as Matt Chatham pointed out in the show, and I played contact sports growing up, and you get dinged and hit sometimes. It's not always the head; it could be a knee, it could be a back. Sports that are physical. This probably shouldn't be as much a surprise as it is, but when you see the NFL players and what they go through after, keep in mind they started so young, they've been, the bumping of the head all the way through Pop Warner football, high school, college, and the NFL. The folks, the families that have been turning the brains over for research at places like BU, we're seeing the disease and damage to the brains, and this is causing a lot of this even within the NFL. But how can we stop that?
We still don't know the full picture of CTE and injury in NFL athletes or other premier athletes, even some younger athletes that have been shown to have CTE, college players and whatnot, because we're only studying the brains of players who had significant brain injury during their lives. Those are the ones that get donated. So we don't know what the brains of people who didn't show brain injury. So the problem in the NFL, it looks like, 99% of athletes had CTE. That's only of the ones who showed evidence of brain injury. If those were the only ones with all the retired players in the NFL, it'd probably be in the 5 to 10% vicinity for CTE in retired NFL players. That's still not an inconsequential number, but it's not every single athlete gets CTE. We still don't know the whole story.
Interesting. All right. And do you think, Dr. Storo, that, I love pro hockey. I love college hockey. I love football, watching it. And as a spectator, I kind of worry, though, down the road, if parents overreact. I'm not saying they should not underreact. Will there be a pipeline of youth playing sports like contact sports if there's this a real concern over concussion exposure?
I think you'll see some parents and kids more hesitant about it, and for those kids and parents, they probably shouldn't play. I think you're still going to have your hockey families and football families who are very interested in their kid playing the sport, and the kids are super interested. And as long as they're not sustaining significant head trauma, remember, even in football on a given year, only about 10% of the players on a team get concussion. That means 90% don't. And so I think it really comes down to, are you passionate about the sport, and has it been good to you in the past? If you're not sustaining repeated concussions, you're probably okay to keep playing.
Well, I appreciate the perspective and balance. Dr. Storo, pediatrician with CHAD at Children's Hospital at Dartmouth and Dartmouth-Hitchcock. Thank you for updating us on this. Keep us posted. Thank you, Doctor.
Sure, you're welcome.
I want to also mention one of our other sponsors offers free concussion testing. Of course, it's been National Concussion Awareness Day was Friday, this past Friday. Concussions, big part of our talk today, but the Safe Sports Network, located in downtown Manchester, does free concussion baseline testing for student athletes. Free concussion baseline testing. If you want to learn more, go to safesportsnetwork.org. Safesportsnetwork.org. Free testing.